So much warmer.
Hello everyone. So first, thank you for coming today. I hope you enjoyed the pizza. My name is Mohammed. I work as an iOS developer at HolidayPirates's, and actually this was a last-minute presentation for today, so I just prepared my presentation today. But as you know, the other speaker sick, so we had to fill in. And I thought that I could talk with you a little bit about our experience when we started to build our iOS application for HolidayPirates's. We started in April 2017. And I wanted to show you a little bit about our timeline. So in 2017, we had our iOS application. Actually, we had around 9 or 10 different apps with the same content, but different localization, different name, same UI and everything. And we faced actually two main problems. Okay, we have 9 or 10 clones from the same application, and eventually we realized that this is not allowed anymore in App Store. And the second problem, or the second thing that we wanted to improve is, you can see that the app is not user-friendly, a little bit outdated. Also, the code base and the architecture was not good enough if you want to build new features or fix bugs really quickly. So we started to think together how can we improve the current iOS application, and actually we created a new iOS app from scratch. The old app was built in Objective-C, the new one is done in Swift. And that was the first MVP that we created. You can see a little bit, we still have the purple color, we have more tabs in the bottom, and the idea actually, if you have browsed our iOS application, is we present you a timeline of the best deals that you can browse, and we work in more than one European market. So for example, these deals were for the UK market. And the thing that we want you as a user to easily know is the title of the deal. You can see a photo of the location that can attract you, and you can see the price really quickly. So we started to iterate more on that, and played a little bit with the corners, adding shadows to our code. This is only one screen from our application, but can give you an idea about the direction that we went to. You can see also that we changed a little bit our screens at the bottom. So the bottom tab where we had the search here, we didn't have the search there, and we went through so many UI changes later to eventually have this view right now that we can see. So as you can see, we just moved the search to be at the top, less tabs in the bottom. We just removed totally the whole contrast with the purple color. We went for simple UI, light background, big titles, and I guess we were lucky by that time because iOS 11 were encouraging people to go into this direction and use the bigger titles and everything in bold. So I guess that was good for us by that time to move into this direction. And what I want to talk with you about today is only our experience and what we went through, our own problems, but this doesn't mean that this is right or wrong. So every one of you has his own experience, but I'm here to just share that with you and also get more info about your experience, and you can ask as many questions as you want. Great. So our goals, when we started to build our own application, so we had some goals and we wanted to maintain these goals as we built them. So first thing, we wanted to have more neat, clean, and easy UI and UX. Second thing, we wanted to have cleaner architecture compared to before. So MVP, MVC, Viper, MVVM, so many questions, and we don't know. And we wanted to have a testable application, so modular, decoupled layers, We can write unit tests, UI tests, integration tests, as much as we can. So as we go, we try to maintain 3 goals, and we managed to achieve some. We didn't manage to achieve some other stuff that we will talk about. But what went good is when we decided that, okay, we should maintain our UI to be easy, neat, and clean. Eventually, our users liked that, and we got some good reviews on app stores. We have 4.6, and almost on the German market only, we have almost 21,000 ratings, and usually find us in the top 20. So, okay, now we know, yeah, our users like the simple UI and the just straightforward things, and okay, that was a good thing for us, we can cross that. Okay, clean architecture. As we moved or wanted to have a clean app, we had first so many questions and so many resources to study from. And okay, I just joined the company and now I have like literally empty Xcode projects. Now what should I do? Then the most approachable way by that time, or the most approachable design pattern that everyone was talking about, and yeah, it's really good and makes everything really testable, was Viper. And okay, then some people were talking about MVVM, and then there is a war between Viper, MVVM, and MVC and MVP. So like usually there's nothing good or nothing bad, so you have to choose your own. But we decided to go first with Viper, and okay, we managed to achieve some good things. So we had decoupled data and presentation layers, and this was really important for us because we usually start with implementing the data layer, and then we try to make that testable. So, okay, I can, for example, test my code that saves something to core data or pulls something from the network, and I don't care at all about my UI and how can I bind that to my data layer. It was then easier for us to build new features and fix issues because now we know where to look for things when they go wrong, and this resulted in faster development time, which actually helped us a lot when we reached the deadline. But but right now what you can see is this is what we have in our project. So only we have a group for our presentation code, another group for the data code, and nothing else. And the whole work that we do is try to bind the presentation layer to the data layer in the most clean way, or the most neat way possible, and try to make our presentation and data layers as testable as we can. Great. Of course, nothing went smoothly. We had so many challenges, and the first challenge was to pick something and start working with. Okay, we said, okay, we are gonna use Viper. It's really great. Everyone's talking about Viper, and let's try to test that. So what happened is when you start experimenting and reading blogs, you'll find so many confusing resources. So everyone is talking about his own idea, and usually no one says that this is the best way to do this or that, and you have to find your own way. So you have to build things, throw them away, start over again. So this took some time until we realized, okay, that first step for us, Viper, can be good. Okay. Then as you learn, and if you have more people working with you, then okay, you see so many misunderstandings when you implement things like MVVM for the first time. So did anyone implement MVVM in his own application in the best possible way from the first time? No. Right? So usually you don't know what's view model and what's gonna happen, and should I subscribe in the view model or in the controller? What is the data binding and how people use that? Should I use RX Coco or not? Should I use RX Twist or not, for example, if you want to do the binding? So many questions. Okay, third challenge was the many UI changes that we had in between. So first, as I showed you, we had the MVP project, and that was all purple. And then, okay, we said, let's refine that. So we said, okay, this is our refinement. Let's make it more clean. And then iOS 11 was released. So yeah, we should then check what's going to happen. And yeah, Apple guidelines usually push you towards the new things. We have seen so many use cases also after iOS 11, and they looked really good. And we were not done with the development, so we said, okay, yeah, let's change the UI again. So usually UI changes, when they happen, they interrupt your development cycle and you have to start again implementing things that you did already before. I'm gonna talk about the two decisions that we went through. So first we picked Viper and we started coding, and it was really great. Everything was really nice, and we have testable code right now, and the most important thing for us is the consistency. So whenever my teammate, for example, wants to create a new controller or a new screen, let's say, so now she knows how to create a controller, how to create an interactor, presenter, how to connect all of that. So now we had a little bit like a template that we can follow, and we don't question ourselves a lot about things that, like where should we put this logic here in the presenter or the interactor or anywhere else. So consistency when we decided to build our application was the most important thing for us, because we were building a new app. We had so many new screens to implement, and we just wanted that to be as fast as possible, but at the same time, we wanted to do that in a clean way. Okay, so we had some good things with Viper, but we had also so many not good things. So usually what we discovered is we get confused between the interactor and the presenter. So at many points you will write some presentation code, I don't know, in the interactor and the other way around. And you also don't feel that there is like a separation of concerns between the presenter, what the presenter is doing and what the interactor is doing. So I'm not sure if like you face some situations like that, but that was also the case for us. Is when you want to connect the dots between your view, your interactor, presenter, and router, so usually you create that somewhere, and in our case was called the configurator class. And most of the methods in the configurator class were static methods, and usually these are not well testable. So we didn't like that also, and you will find that the presenter is responsible for more than one thing. So for example, presenter will talk to the view, and also he will talk to the interactor and wait for things to happen so that he can format them. And so it breaks also the single responsibility rule. And having or putting in mind that we wanted to use RxSwift in future because we wanted to move from the imperative way to the declarative way, like we didn't want to care more about how to do the filtering or how to do for loops or how I don't know, to run a block of code on a background thread. Using all RxSwift actually made us go into the declarative approach and use the abstractions for all of that. And doing that with the Viper, it's not impossible, but it was really hard. So that pushed us. Oh, I can show you also a little bit from what we had. So this, for example, was the long view controller. And as you know, usually your view will have a reference to the presenter, and you have so many protocols, so you have for everything so many protocols, and that eventually you need to connect all of them. And that was our presenter, for example. So our presenter, you'll see that we have reference to our view, a reference to our interactor, and the reference to our router. That's the third story. And you can inject all of these properties in an initializer, for example, and it should be fine, but what we didn't like is we had so many references to things that usually they don't belong to the presenter, and now the presenter is doing like so many jobs, and then the definition of the presenter itself is no more valid. So I can show you also, I'm sorry if the font is a little bit small, but for example, we had some methods to do the login. So usually you will see once the user does the login is, for example, we call the view to show the progress HUD, and then we call the interactor to do all the login operations. And inside, we just wait for the response and do something else. So for us, as that's only the login screen, but we had bigger screens than that. So when our logic gets more complicated, we had to handle so many things, and we had so many completion handlers. And I love RxSwift because we don't have so many completion handlers when you use RxSwift. But at that point, like we had to do with the callback hell. So we wanted to improve that a little bit. This is just a login interactor, so you see most of the times our interactors were only talking to services either remote or local. So that's basically like the classical Viper implementation, but what we wanted to do is to move to MVVM eventually. We didn't say, okay, we should move to MVVM because everybody is saying MVVM is better than Viper, for example, but we created small apps, and thanks to my team lead also, who helped us a lot in the beginning, although he is an Android developer, but he also tried to make us create smaller apps and test the different design patterns and see where can we go. Usually, and this is a good thing, usually you find so many good samples about MVVM from Google than compared to Apple. So when you go to Google samples repo on GitHub, you'll find so many samples for MVVM and all of the other design patterns, and usually you don't find that. So what we had when we started to do our implementation with MVVM is going back to Google, not to Apple. But okay, MVVM for us was easier to learn. So learning curve was not as big as Viper, because in Viper we have so many protocols, so many screens, so many jobs that even we were confused about, especially when it comes to the interactor and the presenter. Or because we have now less number of classes, then it was also easier to maintain. What we like more is we don't have reference to our view inside our view model anymore. So in the presenter, for example, you have a reference to your view and usually you use that, but if you create a view model, so what happens is usually your controller only reacts to the data that changes, and you can do the binding in so many clean ways, so your view model doesn't know anything about whatever view he is binded to. Of course, with RxSwift, everyone will tell you MVVM is the best. Well, actually, it's the best from our experience, and it was really easy to use RxSwift library with MVVM. Being said, I can show you also a little bit about how did we improve our controllers later. So for example, this is for the home screen, and what we mainly depend on is only this property with the view model that we create, and then we can inject everything that we need. And for example, the second most important thing for us is our data source, and it's just a protocol that we define, and we have remote and local data sources then that we can use later in our data layer, but our view model doesn't know anything about that. He's only talking with protocol types. This is one method that we created, for example, to bind our view model to our view controller. So, for example, to fetch some categories, I'm just binding my post categories observable that was created in the view model. I guess the second slide has that. And then what happens here is my table view will only react to anything that's being sent on this stream, and then it will just like reload the whole table view, and I can get my cell and configure everything I want. So this made our code like really smaller, less number of classes. It's even more clean. We can react to so many changes, to so many inputs. For example, in our home screen, we need to react. So we have 9 markets, and you can switch your account. So, for example, you can sign up to UK, US, France, Germany, and you can switch between all of them. But we need to trigger the post categories request, for example, when you switch from Germany to France, so that you can like refresh the home page. And to do all of that with the old way was really hard, because we had to change. Now, for example, the user did switch the country somehow, and we change in our view controller if the country is changed, and then we ask the presenter and tell him, the country has been changed, and then he asks the interactor to do something, and then we wait for the results, and they come back. But right now, what we do is just we are listening to the value of the country, and this is on our side is behavior relay, if you are familiar with this concept. And any data that's being sent on this stream, we just listen to that, and we can just ask our data source, post data source, to adjust the categories with the value of the country right now. So whenever our country changes, the request will be fired. New data will be like written on this stream for the post categories, and my table view will just react to that because it's binded here, and then I see my table view updated. We found also that this prevented so many bugs and crashes that we had before, especially when you are dealing with table views and when you refresh data between different sources. For example, when we change our countries, this caused so many bugs and crashes. And eventually we learned some lessons. Is when you start building your product, then everybody will like push you to show the final UI. But please don't do that. So start with the minimum UI first. Implement your app itself, do everything that you want, and then eventually you can do the rest of the iterations on the UI, because this will just interrupt your development process. And usually, if you are focused and you do more trials on your architecture, for example, it's better than it's better to invest this time in that compared to implementing the UI. The second most important thing that helped us is we built small apps when we started to experiment. So we did a mistake is we wanted to do our full app first in Viper and then our full app then in MVVM, which was really huge. And then that was impossible to know which way is better. So when we build small apps, like really small, they do one thing only, and we focused on that. We were able to compare more the pros and cons for every different way, and we could eventually choose MVVM because it was better for us. Unit tests, yeah, that's very important. And usually you say, okay, I'm gonna do that in the end, but when you write unit tests, it shows so many vulnerabilities in your architecture and your code, and helps you actually improve your architecture. So I guess it's really important to write that. I mean, to be honest, we didn't write like unit tests also in the beginning. So when we wrote some unit tests, we started to realize, yeah, that actually helps me to define my protocols better, for example. It helps me to focus more on dependency injection in some parts. So I guess these are the main 3 lessons that I can share with you. That was a very short presentation. But thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
How much time did it take to migrate from Viper to MVVM? This is first question.
Okay.
And second is how easy or what is your experience? How to convince management that you need to do it?
Okay, I can start with the second question. That's really hard to answer, but I guess we were lucky to have a team lead who understands the importance of that and to have clean code and have maintainable architecture in the future. But when I talk with other people, like other friends, they usually say it's really hard to convince the manager. So I guess it depends on your manager eventually. If he believes that this is a very good step to do and will save you and your team like lots of time in future. That's the first question is how much did it take for us to migrate? Okay, so we released first, we chose Viper and we released the app, and we took a while in between, I guess 3 months to make the app more stable, and then we started. So far right now it's 5 months, around 5 months. Yeah, I guess so. Maybe a little bit more. Yeah, I'm bad with the timing, but I guess it's around. The thing is, it's not easy because usually you have to translate everything, the same thing that you did in Viper, and it's not easy to refactor because you built your app already, and it's not like you are refactoring a method or a class. You are like changing a whole module, and then what we did is, I guess, like rewriting the whole app to be more accurate here. So we didn't write for sure the whole logic because you have so many things that you already thought about and you know how to implement. But the trick is to find the right way to do the binding between the data layer and the presentation layer. And this took the long time or the many experiments for us to find the best approach. So for example, one small thing is when we started with MVVM, we used to subscribe to our observable or to our data sources in the view model, and then eventually we can like push all of that on a variable or something like that, and then make our view controller subscribe to that again, and then after that we can call something .reload data, table view.reload data. But as we learn more, we realize that this is not a right way to use ArcSys, because ArcSys basically, or like should remove this step from your code. So you shouldn't subscribe in a place, push that somewhere, and then subscribe again. You can already do that in one step. So what we do now is we only have our observers in the view model, and we do all of the subscriptions in the view controller.
You mentioned that the tests kind of guided your architecture. Did you apply some sort of TDD?
Not TDD at all, to be honest. But we usually, like when we implement like a screen and we have controllers, view models, and other data layer classes and models, then we start by testing the data layer first, and then we find some holes, like for example, especially when it comes, I guess most cases were for me when it came to saving data in core data. Usually this is the tricky part, and then you have to try to abstract a little bit and create more protocols, and then at that time you see that the unit test actually made you realize that the method that you wrote to save something, to save a record in core data, is not testable. And then you had to abstract that and do dependency injection and use some protocols to make it testable. With the remote data sources, I guess sometimes, but not usually. Usually it's easier when you create a remote data source to query something from the network and parse the data. But the main trick for us was when we dealt with core data.
Great talk, thank you. Given your JavaScript background, have you ever considered React Native?
Of course, yeah, I tried React Native, and it's really nice. I love React generally, so either it's for web or for mobile. I guess the hardest part with React is the styling, from my perspective, I don't know. But also, I guess, at some points it doesn't give you the same native feeling that you have when you do or you write your app in Swift or Objective-C. Usually are dependent also on what React provides you, all the APIs available from their side. So sometimes, as I remember with some of the animations when it comes to say a layer and things like that, these APIs are not still well defined there, or usually you find them in a beta or something, so they are not stable. So you are just dependent on them, on these things. But if you do an app that like you don't need to like use these fancy animations and stuff like that, I guess React Native can be really good. The only thing, the main thing is you get to create a mobile app in like nothing. Like we use React Native in our hackathon, last hackathon. So we had to create a product in 2 days, and the best approach for us was to use React Native. So it's good, it's not bad. But yeah, it depends on, I guess, on your choice eventually.
But you didn't use it for your app, why?
For our app, no. Why? That's a hard question also. To be honest, I can't answer that. Well, maybe some parts, then I guess future, but then it's also hard when you write some JavaScript and you write Swift and you try to compile both of them together. It's not impossible, you can do that, it's a little bit hard only, as I know from my experience in that. And it just like changes your mindset a lot. So like for me, when I write an app with React, so I have to think about components and all of the life cycle of the components, did mount, did unmount, and then with the constructors, it's totally different. So it feels like more web development than more mobile development for me. You have also to think about your CSS kind of rules there. It's not pure CSS, but you write styling rules. So it's different when you architect your app using React Native compared to native iOS development. Third thing is you have to be updated always with what the React original framework is doing right. So for example, recently they released React hooks, and then okay, you need to like check what's happening and then update your app. So no more using class components, for example, but hooks are now better, for example. things like this. So they don't have view controllers, they don't have view models. You can create the same thing, for example, for sure, and they have Rx JavaScript and everything, but it's totally different. I guess so. That's the mindset: is you switch the context between writing JavaScript or writing a React native app and writing a native iOS using Swift or Objectives.
Thank you.
One more thing, MVVM as such does not have a router, for example. How did you
Router.
translate it from Viper?
That was yeah, that was a hard part because it was also a little bit not clean. I mean, with Viper, the routing part is really clean. So for us, like we were depending on the view controller in this case, and I guess at many points this can get a little bit complicated, especially when you have so many routes or so many segues that you want to perform, and if your storyboard is really huge also, so the routing part is not clean with MVVM. I have seen some solutions with people like try to inject the router somehow, but for me, I just went for the most simple approach and did that from the view controller.
How do you handle your deep links then?
Deep links. Well, so far we don't have deep linking in our app.
Do you think will that cause a problem when you
well, to be honest, I still don't know, but I guess yes, it will cause a problem because I've been thinking about that. But I guess I'll find out.
There's something called coordinating patterns.
Coordinating.
Coordination pattern.
Coordination.
Like
For
MC.
Yeah, MC.
It's enough for us.
It's not supposed to sound like Roman numerals.
Yeah. I've also seen so many examples, even with Viper. So usually, like you create classical Viper and also introduce view models. So it's mixed with everything, and that's also the main confusing part for us. Is okay, so many classes, so many things to maintain, but we don't know how to. What's the job for everything? So you have presenter and you have view model at the same time, and okay, they usually say presenter should like be in the place where you format your stuff, but also the view model can do that. Thank you so much.
And you can stay here for a while.
Yeah, of course. Your time for 14 minutes. Feel free. Thank you.
Thank you.